Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepless Scientist, a quiet place in the cosmos where your thoughts can unwind and knowledge becomes a soft lullaby for the night. Tonight's journey will take us into the still centre of awareness itself, into the subtle presence that watches everything, thoughts, feelings, sensations, yet never says a word. Our story tonight is called Consciousness and Reality, the quiet observer within. But before you settle in and get cozy, take a slow breath and, if you'd like, dim the lights or let a fan hum softly in the background. You can close your eyes if that feels right. We'll move gently together through a landscape that begins inside your own mind. If your attention drifts, that's perfectly fine. Let it wander. We'll still be here, quietly unfolding the story. There are moments in life when you suddenly realise you've been thinking, not about what's around you, but about the fact that you are thinking. Maybe you're washing dishes or driving along a familiar road, and out of nowhere comes that little shimmer of self-awareness. I'm here, doing this. For a fleeting instant, it feels as if there's a part of you standing just behind your own thoughts, quietly watching. It doesn't judge or interfere, it simply notices, like a witness sitting in a quiet gallery, observing the play of light across the room. That gentle act of noticing might be the most mysterious thing about being alive. You're not only aware of the world, but you are aware of being aware. That second layer, that mirror-like quality of mind, is what philosophers call consciousness, and what some traditions call the silent witness. It doesn't belong to any one moment or mood. It's there when you're joyful, when you're frightened, even when you're lost in thought. It's the background hum of being itself. Science, of course, approaches this mystery differently. When neuroscientists look for the origins of awareness, they see patterns of light flickering in the brain, vast networks sparking and settling like city lights viewed from orbit. But behind all those signals, something deeper is happening. The brain doesn't just collect information, it organises it, integrates it, and sometimes, in a moment we still don't fully understand, that integration becomes experience. You don't need to know the math or the symbols to feel it. Imagine instead a choir beginning with a single voice, then swelling as more voices join. When enough harmony arises, suddenly there's a song, something new that exists only when all the parts resonate together. In that same way, the mind might weave its countless signals into the unified sense of I am. Yet even as science maps the circuitry of awareness, it cannot quite touch the thing itself, the feeling of being here. That's because consciousness isn't something we can step outside of to examine. It's the lens through which all examinations happen. It's both the question and the questioner. If you pause right now and listen not to the world around you, but to the quiet sense of being aware, there it is, the faint pulse of presence. It doesn't have a colour or shape. You can't locate it behind your eyes or inside your chest, and yet it feels closer than breath, closer than thought. You might even sense it watching these very words unfold. That is the quiet observer we'll be travelling with tonight. Through the ages, poets, monks and scientists have all approached this same presence from different directions. Some have called it the soul, others the self, others simply awareness. Whatever name we give it, it's what allows you to step back from your emotions and say, I'm feeling sad, instead of being completely lost in sadness. It's what lets you look at a memory and see it as past. It's what makes you human, not just reacting, but reflecting. The philosopher Thomas Nagel once asked, "What is it like to be a bat?" He meant that every creature has its own inner world, a unique point of view that no external measurement can reach. You could study a bat's brain for decades and never feel what it's like to sense the world through echo instead of sight. The same is true for us. No scan or formula can capture what it feels like to be you. To smell rain on the pavement, to remember your grandmother's voice, to be aware that you're alive right now. This gap between objective observation and subjective experience, is sometimes called the hard problem of consciousness. But tonight, rather than solving it, we'll rest inside it, as you might rest on a porch, listening to the distant hum of life, not needing to explain it. The mystery itself can be soothing, like the way a candle flickers for no reason other than that air exists. Imagine for a moment that your mind is a vast lake. Each thought is a ripple spreading across its surface. When the water is agitated, the reflections break and shimmer. But when it's still, the entire sky appears in it. The moon, the clouds, the quiet stars. That still surface is the state from which the witness sees clearly. The ripples don't vanish. They simply stop distorting the reflection. You can feel that stillness sometimes in the moments between breaths, or when you first wake and haven't yet remembered who you're supposed to be. The witness doesn't try to change what it sees. It doesn't prefer joy over sorrow or clarity over confusion. It simply observes, and somehow that observation alone can soften everything, like light falling gently across a room, revealing shapes without judgment. When people practice mindfulness, this is often what they are really training. Not to control the mind, but to watch it kindly, to rest in that space where you are aware that thoughts are passing clouds, not the whole sky. Scientists who study meditation have noticed something remarkable. As people enter deeper states of calm observation, the restless networks in the brain begin to quiet. Regions usually busy with self-talk and planning grow still, like instruments lowering their volume in an orchestra. What remains is a clearer signal, awareness without the usual noise. No complex formula can describe that, but you can feel it in your own experience whenever you simply pause, breathe, and notice the noticing. So tonight, we'll follow that gentle thread, from this simple act of awareness to the deeper question of what consciousness really is and whether it might shape reality itself. For now, just rest in that small but astonishing fact. You are aware, and you are aware of being aware. That's where everything begins. As your thoughts drift, you might feel that quiet observer settling into the background, a calm, patient presence, always watching, never forcing. Like the steady glow of a lantern that doesn't try to chase the darkness, it simply shines. And that light, your own awareness, will guide us through the rest of our journey. There is a particular kind of silence that isn't about the absence of sound. It's the kind that appears when your attention suddenly turns inward, when the world fades to the background, and you realize you're watching your own thoughts unfold. It's like standing between two mirrors, one facing the world, the other facing yourself. And for a brief moment, you can see both reflections continuing endlessly into each other. That space between them, that's where the witness lives. You might have felt it in those quiet in-between moments, when you're alone in a room and your mind drifts, replaying conversations, imagining futures that never came to be, constructing entire worlds behind your eyes. Then suddenly, you become aware that you're doing it. A soft click inside the mind. You've shifted from being in the thought to seeing the thought. And just like that, a sense of depth opens up. One part of you thinking, the other part quietly observing. For centuries, philosophers have argued about what this inner observer might be. Some said it was the soul, eternal and indivisible. Others saw it as a trick of memory, an echo the brain mistakes for self. Modern neuroscience, though still young, has begun to glimpse how this inner reflection might form, not as a mystical entity, but as a function of a brain that has learned to model itself. Deep inside your head, countless neurons are firing every second, exchanging small electrical whispers. Most of these signals never rise to the level of awareness. They are background computations, keeping you alive, balanced, responsive. But among them lies a delicate network that seems to light up whenever you turn your thoughts inward, when you recall a memory, imagine the future, or think about yourself in relation to others. Scientists call it the default mode network, but perhaps it's easier to think of it as the mind's mirror. It glows quietly when your attention leaves the outer world and wanders home. In a way, it's the brain's resting hum, the low music playing beneath every thought. When you're focused on solving a puzzle or driving through heavy rain, the outer networks, those handling attention and motor controls, are dominant. But the moment you relax, gaze at the ceiling or stare out of a window, this inward network returns, weaving together fragments of memory, imagination, and identity. It's the place where the story of you continues, even when the world is silent. But the mirror doesn't merely reflect, it edits, smooths, and fills in. Your brain doesn't record reality like a camera, it interprets it, combining present sensations with remembered patterns to create a seamless picture. This is why time can stretch during boredom and vanish during joy. The witness within doesn't watch raw data, it watches an interpretation, a living painting in motion. The fascinating thing is that this self-reflection seems to arise naturally from how the brain manages attention. Imagine a spotlight moving across a dark stage. The light represents your focus, illuminating whatever you happen to notice right now. But the brain also needs a map of where that spotlight is pointed, so it can coordinate movement and decision. According to one gentle theory, the brain builds a small internal model of its own focus, a map of attention itself. In this model, there's always a watcher, a centre from which attention flows. That imagined watcher, that simplified sketch of awareness, may be what we experience as the silent observer. It's like drawing a picture of your own eyes. The drawing isn't the same as sight, but it gives you a sense of where your gaze rests. The mind, in its quiet cleverness, seems to do this automatically. It sketches a little image of being aware, and through that image, awareness feels like something separate, a self looking out. You can test this in small ways. Notice how you can think about your own thinking. You can judge whether your focus is clear or scattered, whether your emotion feels heavy or light. You can even decide to change it. That ability to observe the contents of consciousness means the mind holds a reflection of itself. It's a simple trick, but one with astonishing implications. We are creatures that not only live, but know that we are living. Sometimes this reflective ability brings suffering. You can become lost in your own mirror, over-analysing, looping through worries, replaying mistakes. The witness becomes entangled in the story it's trying to observe, but at other times it becomes a refuge, a calm vantage point above the noise. You might sit in meditation and feel thoughts rising like bubbles in water, each one shimmering, expanding and fading before the next appears. You realise that even when the bubbles change, shape and speed, the water remains. That awareness is always there, holding them all. There's a quiet beauty in knowing you don't have to identify with every thought that passes through. When anger rises, the witness can watch it without becoming it. When fear stirs, the witness can see the tremor without trembling. Awareness doesn't deny emotion. It holds it tenderly as the sky holds storms. The more we recognize this, the gentler our experience of life becomes. To some traditions, this inner presence is sacred, a spark of the infinite seen through human eyes. To scientists, it's a system evolved to manage attention and memory more efficiently. But whichever language we use, the feeling is the same, an unshakable sense of something that is not the thought itself, yet never apart from it. Like the moon reflected in water, the image trembles with each ripple, but the moon above remains untouched. Even now, as you listen, there's an awareness behind the listening. You can sense the rhythm of your breath, the texture of sound in the room, the faint hum of your own thoughts. And behind all of that, a quiet watcher that doesn't need to do anything at all. It simply is. This awareness isn't owned by any particular mood or memory. It was present when you were a child, watching the world in wonder and it will be present in old age, watching memories dissolve like mist. It doesn't age, it doesn't rush, it just watches. The stories it witnesses change: joy, grief, routine, discovery, but it remains constant, the one light that never flickers. You might picture it as a candle hidden inside a lantern. The glass fogs and clears, dust gathers, patterns of shadow shift, but the flame inside remains steady. Sometimes we forget it's there, distracted by the reflections on the glass. Yet the warmth continues quietly, patient and unending. That warmth is consciousness itself, the mirror that not only reflects the world, but also reflects the act of reflecting. As you rest here, you can let that realization soften everything around you. There's nothing to fix or achieve, only to see. The mind's mirror doesn't demand silence, it offers it. Within that stillness, awareness begins to glow, not as a concept or a formula, but as the most intimate experience of being alive. And in that gentle glow, the journey inward continues, deeper into the architecture of perception itself, where the quiet observer begins to shape the very world it beholds. If you've ever stood beside a lake at dawn, you might remember how the surface begins perfectly smooth, mirroring the pale sky until a single leaf lands and ripples spread in slow rings. The reflections tremble but never disappear. Awareness works much the same way. A calm expanse where sensations, thoughts and emotions drift across the surface, each leaving its brief signature. Beneath that movement, there is stillness, and within that stillness lies something exquisite, the ability to know that you know. It may sound abstract, but you experience it every day. When you realize you've been staring into space and bring your attention back, or when you hear your name in a crowded room and immediately recognize it, that tiny spark of recognition. Oh, I noticed that, is awareness turning toward itself. It's a moment so familiar that most of us never think about it. Yet it marks one of the most extraordinary abilities of the human mind, to not only perceive the world, but to perceive that it's perceiving. This loop of self-recognition may be what allows consciousness to feel continuous. Without it, every sight and sound might pass like scenery through a train window, vivid but disconnected. Instead, your mind gathers them into a story with a central viewpoint, a silent narrator saying, "This is happening to me." That narrator is not loud. It rarely uses words. It's more like a faint glow at the edges of thought, reminding you of your own presence. Scientists have long suspected that this reflective quality emerges from the brain's need to manage its attention. Imagine you're reading a book in a noisy cafe. Dozens of voices, clinking cups, footsteps, and background music reach your ears at once. Yet you somehow hold a single line of text in focus. Your brain constantly shifts this spotlight of attention, brightening one stimulus, dimming others, balancing what matters most in the moment. To coordinate such a delicate dance, the brain seems to keep an internal model of where its spotlight is aimed, a kind of mental map of awareness itself. When this model is active, we sense a me who is directing the light. Neuroscientists sometimes describe this as an attention schema, but we can think of it simply as the mind's quiet self-portrait, a picture of being aware. The remarkable twist is that once the brain paints this picture, the image feels real. We don't experience it as a diagram, we experience it as the living sense of I. You can sense this dynamic directly. Close your eyes and imagine a simple object, perhaps a cup or a tree. Notice how your focus rests on the image, then shifts when you hear a sound nearby. There's a small pause between the two moments, a change in where the inner spotlight falls. Now imagine noticing that change, the turning itself. The moment you do, you're not only aware of the cup or the sound, but of awareness moving. the witness steps one layer deeper. Philosophers sometimes say that consciousness is like a mirror that cannot see itself directly, only its reflections. Yet this isn't quite true. The mirror can glimpse its own edges through the world it reflects. When you become aware of awareness, the world becomes that mirror, each sight and sound revealing the quiet clarity behind it. It's as if the lake looks up and realizes the sky it reflects has been within it all along. In daily life, this self-reflective process is what allows you to learn, to plan, to hold yourself accountable. When you tell yourself, "I need to focus," or "I shouldn't have said that," you're using awareness to adjust awareness. It's feedback built into perception, a gentle calibration that makes human consciousness both flexible and deeply personal. The same mechanism lets you empathize with others. To imagine someone else's feelings, you use the same internal mirror you use to understand your own. Still, there's a paradox here. The more the mind turns its mirror inward, the easier it is to get lost in reflections, in thoughts about thoughts, judgments about judgments, layers upon layers of commentary. The mind begins to mistake the reflection for the thing itself, like a camera photographing its own lens. That's when awareness feels cluttered, restless, heavy. The water no longer shows the sky, it only shows its ripples. Meditative traditions speak of this as forgetting the witness. The goal isn't to stop thinking, that would be impossible, but to notice thoughts as movements of water, not the lake's essence. When you observe a feeling without naming it, or a thought without chasing it, you return to the mirror's quiet clarity. This simple act of seeing without grasping gradually reveals a sense of peace that doesn't depend on circumstances. It's the peace of still water, reflecting everything yet holding nothing. To put it another way, consciousness isn't a spotlight fixed on one point. It's more like a lantern radiating softly in all directions. Most of the time, we focus the beam narrowly on work, conversation, plans, and forget the larger glow. But when we step back, the lantern's light gently fills the room again. That larger light is awareness itself, and it doesn't need to do anything to shine. It's not made of effort or concentration, it's made of presence. Even the most complex scientific explanations cannot replace that experience. We can describe neurons exchanging signals, measure waves of activity rising through the cortex, trace circuits that correspond to attention and memory. Yet those diagrams are like musical notes on a page. The music is something else, the lived melody of awareness hearing itself. If one wanted to translate those measurements into feeling, you could say that consciousness deepens whenever the mind signals resonate together, like instruments tuning to the same tone until harmony emerges. No equations are needed to know what harmony feels like. You feel it every time your inner world and the outer one briefly align, when your breath and the moment move at the same rhythm. Right now, if you rest your attention gently on the sound of your breathing, you might notice a subtle pause at the top of each inhale. In that tiny pause, awareness feels clear, transparent, infinite. Then the next breath begins and thoughts return, carrying you onward, but somewhere inside the mirror remains steady, untouched by movement. The lake never loses its depth just because its surface ripples. Understanding this, not as an idea but as a felt truth, transforms the way you see yourself. You're not merely the stories you tell or the emotions you carry. You're also the space in which they appear, the stillness that reflects them. The more you sense that, the more life slows into something tender and luminous. The noise of thought softens, and you can hear the quiet heartbeat of consciousness itself, steady and unbroken, like reflections in still water. Imagine for a moment that your mind is a grand theatre. The stage stretches wide, its curtains are deep velvet black. Scenery shift across it every second. Flashes of memory, fragments of sound, bright sensations arriving from the senses. Spotlights roam across this inner space, illuminating one thought, then another, while countless other ideas wait quietly in the wings, and somewhere out in the dark seat sits the quiet observer, you, watching the performance unfold. This stage is always active. Even when you sleep, faint scenes continue to play in the form of dreams. The stage never goes dark, it only dims. What changes is which parts of the play are illuminated, which voices step into the light, and which fade into the background. Scientists sometimes describe this process as the way the brain makes certain information globally available, but it's easier to imagine it as a single bright spotlight on a vast stage. The moment a memory, an image, or a sound enters that circle of light, it becomes part of your conscious experience. Everything outside it still exists, your heartbeat, your posture, the hum of distant traffic. But until the light touches them, they stay unseen. Picture how this works in an ordinary moment. You're reading a sentence right now. Each word appears in that spotlight of attention. Once you move to the next line, the previous one fades into the wings, replaced by new meaning. If you hear a sudden noise behind you, the spotlight swivels and the stage resets in an instant. What you experience as awareness is this ceaseless choreography, this play of light and focus. And yet behind the spotlight, behind even the stage, there is the theatre itself, the space that holds it all. You could think of that space as consciousness, not what is illuminated, but the room in which illumination can happen at all. It doesn't belong to any single scene or actor. It is what allows the performance to exist. There's a beautiful simplicity to this idea. Awareness, like a stage, is neutral. It doesn't prefer comedy over tragedy. It doesn't cling to one act and resist another. It only provides the openness where both can appear. In your own experience, this means you can watch anger rise, laughter bubble up, sadness pass through, all within the same spacious mind. You are not limited to one role. You are the theatre that hosts them all. Now imagine that every neuron in your brain is like an actor rehearsing lines. Most of the time, they whisper their cues quietly backstage, rehearsing the rhythms of breathing, balance, heartbeat. But occasionally, when something truly significant happens, a bright colour, a sudden thought, a sharp sound, the signal bursts forth, lighting up the stage so completely that it invites the whole cast to take part. The mind becomes aware of that scene. Scientists once tried to describe this process with mathematical precision. They suggested that consciousness arises when separate parts of the brain share enough information to act in harmony, like instruments in an orchestra. But we don't need numbers to understand the feeling of harmony. You already know it. That moment when everything inside you aligns, when your senses, thoughts, and emotions move together as one current. It might happen while listening to music or watching rain slide down a window. That subtle alignment, that resonance, is the lived equivalent of what the formulas were trying to describe. In this theatre of the mind, attention plays the role of director. It decides which actor speaks, which memory enters, which idea takes centre stage. But even the director answers to something larger, the audience, the witness. The director's choices shift from moment to moment, yet the audience remains, quietly watching, taking it all in. You can feel this directly in your own life. Think of how quickly your awareness can change scenes. One moment you're deep in thought about a conversation from last week, and the next you're fully present, noticing the sound of rain on your window. The stage changes without effort. The witness doesn't need to move. It simply watches as the scenery rearranges itself. What's extraordinary is that the brain seems designed for this fluid performance. Billions of tiny connections light up and dim down every fraction of a second. If we could see it, the activity would look like fireflies blinking in a summer field, little sparks of experience weaving a moving tapestry. But even as these patterns shift, awareness itself doesn't blink. It's the steady darkness that allows each firefly to be seen. Sometimes, though, the play on stage can become overwhelming. The lights flash too brightly, the sounds grow too loud, and the observer feels lost in the spectacle. In those moments, it can help to step back, not by changing the scene, but by remembering that you are the space watching it. The stage might shake, but the theatre remains. The curtains might burn, but the night sky behind them is untouched. Throughout history, people have tried to describe this recognition. Some call it enlightenment, others presence, others simply peace. In essence, it's the same simple awareness we all have, just seen clearly, without distraction. When you realise you're not only the actor, not only the script, but the open space in which the entire play unfolds, a quiet ease begins to rise. The tension of control melts away. Life becomes a performance observed with gentle curiosity instead of judgment. You might wonder then, if awareness is like a stage, does it end where the skull ends, or does it reach beyond, blending with other theatres in some greater performance? Science hasn't yet found an answer. The instruments that measure brain activity can tell us when a scene is playing, but not why the lights of experience turn on at all. It's as if we can study every bolt of the stage machinery, yet never catch the audience entering the room. The mystery remains. Still, perhaps the beauty lies in that very mystery. Consciousness, like art, may not be meant to be solved, only experienced. You don't analyse a sunset to enjoy it. You stand quietly and watch. In the same way, awareness doesn't need to be understood in order to be real. It simply unfolds, one scene at a time, as you sit here, watching. So, as this session draws to a close, picture once more that vast inner theatre, the shifting scenery, the spotlight of attention, the steady darkness beyond. You are both the stage and the witness, the dancer and the silence between the steps. And as the curtain softly falls on this part of our journey, the play continues, not outward, but inward, toward the subtle realization that what the witness sees may be shaped by the very act of watching. Picture yourself standing at an open window on a spring morning. Outside, the world is alive. Birds call from rooftops, traffic murmurs in the distance, a neighbour's radio drifts faintly on the air. Yet you don't hear all of it at once. Somehow your mind selects one thread to follow, the rhythm of a single sparrow's song perhaps, and everything else fades into the background. This quiet act of choosing what enters awareness is one of the most remarkable and invisible things your brain does. At any given moment, billions of bits of information surround you. Every glimmer of light, every sound wave, every sensation against your skin. If awareness tried to hold them all, it would collapse under the weight of its own fullness. So the brain builds a gate. This gate filters, prioritizes, and edits the flood of data into a single stream, narrow enough to feel like a coherent world. What reaches the inner witness is not the entire landscape of reality, but a carefully chosen window of it. The trick is that we rarely notice the filter at work. It feels as if we're experiencing the world directly, as though our eyes and ears simply show us what's out there. But experiments have shown that awareness is far more selective and fragile than we think. One of the most famous demonstrations of this is the invisible gorilla study. Participants were asked to watch a video of people passing basketballs and to count the number of passes made by players, wearing white shirts. Midway through the clip, a person in a full gorilla costume walked into the scene, thumped their chest, and walked out again. When asked afterward, nearly half of the viewers didn't see the gorilla at all. Their attention had locked so firmly on counting the passes that the unexpected visitor never entered their awareness. That experiment revealed a simple truth. Attention doesn't just focus our awareness, it defines its boundaries. Everything outside the chosen frame might as well not exist, at least in the conscious sense. The witness sees only what the spotlight of attention reveals. And yet, there's another layer of wonder here. Even the parts we don't consciously notice are still being processed. The unseen gorilla still left faint traces in the brain's visual regions, though the inner theatre never turned the lights on for it. This gatekeeping process isn't just about sight or sound. It shapes how we experience the world itself. If you walk into a room feeling anxious, the filter adjusts to look for threats. If you walk in with curiosity, it opens to patterns, textures, and possibility. The mind's filter doesn't merely edit reality, it builds it, one perception at a time. We live inside the stories our attention selects. Think of memory too. Two people can attend the same concert and come away with entirely different recollections. One remembers the dazzling lights, the other remembers how the bass vibrated through the floor. Each memory becomes a personal world because each person's window was tuned differently. The observer inside each of us looks through a lens shaped by emotion, expectation, and experience. It's easy to imagine the brain as a camera faithfully recording everything, but that isn't what it does. It's more like a painter, filling in shapes and colours where details are missing, emphasising contrast to make meaning stand out. You can see this if you glance quickly around a room. Your eyes jump from one object to another in tiny movements, called saccades, and yet you perceive the room as stable and complete. Between those jumps, your brain quietly stitches together fragments into a continuous image. What you see is less a photograph and more a painting composed in real time. This process has a rhythm, almost musical in nature. The brain doesn't merely react to the world, it predicts it, anticipating what should come next, filling gaps before information arrives. Scientists call this predictive processing, but you might think of it as the mind humming the melody a split second before hearing the next note. Most of the time, the melody matches the world, and reality feels seamless. When it doesn't, when a note surprises you, awareness suddenly sharpens and you turn toward it, as though the world has nudged you awake. This interplay between prediction and surprise shapes every second of your conscious life. You don't see reality itself. You see your brain's best guess at reality constantly updated by what you notice. The observer is not just a passive witness, it's a quiet composer, tuning experience into something that makes sense. Consider walking through your home in the dark. You know the distance to the wall, the placement of furniture, even without seeing them. Your mind constructs a mental map, a soft echo of the room that guides your steps. When you finally switch on the light, you're not shocked by what you see. The visual image simply confirms what the inner map already expected. Awareness, then, is like a duet between memory and moment, between what has been and what is becoming. But even this duet can mislead. Sometimes the predictive song grows too confident and drowns out the raw notes of the present. You might miss a friend's smile because your thoughts are rehearsing a worry. You might mishear a phrase because your brain filled in the ending it expected. The window of awareness, while selective for survival, also limits what we call truth. The world outside remains infinitely richer than what passes through the filter, yet this narrowing has a hidden beauty. Without it, the flood of sensations would be unbearable. The window's smallness makes focus possible. The silence around a single violin note lets it move you. In the same way, awareness, by choosing, creates meaning. The witness inside you doesn't just observe the scene, it decides which details matter enough to notice. The rest dissolve into the background hum of existence. Still there, but unseen, waiting for another moment of attention to bring them to life. Right now, you might try this quietly. Let your gaze settle on one object near you. A cup, a shadow on the wall, the gentle movement of curtains. For a few seconds, see only that, letting everything else fade into the edges. Then release your focus and feel how the room expands again. That shift from narrow beam to open field is what your mind performs constantly, moment after moment, composing reality on the fly. The silent observer is not just looking through the window, it is shaping the glass, polishing it, deciding which patterns of light pass through. Awareness is not passive, it is active, alive, creative. And as we continue, we'll step a little closer to that creativity, to the subtle architecture by which perception itself is built. For now, it's enough to remember that every scene you witness, every sound you hear, every memory that feels like the whole of reality is only one carefully chosen frame in the endless movie of existence. Close your eyes for a moment and picture the room you're sitting in. Even with your eyes shut, you can sense its size, the position of the door, the faint hum of an appliance somewhere nearby. You might even imagine where the light falls on the walls. But here's the astonishing thing. You're not seeing what's in front of you. You're seeing what your brain expects to be there. The mind is never waiting for the world to tell it what exists. It's constantly guessing, composing, predicting the next note in the symphony of experience. The moment you open your eyes, what you perceive is less an incoming flood of truth, and more a conversation between what's out there and what your brain has already decided should be out there. In that sense, you don't live in reality. You live through a story your mind keeps rewriting, frame by frame, to make sense of the world. You can feel this process at work in small, everyday ways. When you walk into a familiar kitchen, you already know where the table stands and how the handles of the cupboards feel. If someone silently moves one chair overnight, your brain might not even notice. It simply paints the room as it remembers it until some small mismatch, a scrape underfoot or a shadow in an unexpected place, wakes you to the update. This dance between prediction and correction happens so quickly that you rarely see it happening. It's the quiet stitching that keeps the fabric of reality from unraveling. Scientists once thought perception was like a photograph. Light enters the eyes, signals travel to the brain, and there a picture appears. But experiments began to reveal something stranger. When shown incomplete shapes or blurred letters, people could still identify them easily. The brain wasn't merely recording, it was filling in. It was acting as a painter, not a camera. Over time, researchers realized this was the key to how we move through the world so seamlessly. The brain is an artist of expectation. It sketches outlines before the scene is fully revealed, coloring the world with probability. Imagine walking along a forest path. The rustle of leaves, the flicker of movement among trees, the scent of damp earth. All these impressions arrive at once, but you don't process them separately. You interpret them together. Ah, the wind, or a bird. That judgment arises because your brain already holds thousands of patterns of how the forest behaves. When one or two clues appear, it predicts the rest, and the scene forms instantly. You see the whole before the parts. This predictive rhythm is what allows you to move gracefully through the world. It's why you can catch a ball without calculating its trajectory, or finish a friend's sentence before they speak. In the soft mathematics of the mind, not with symbols or formulas, but with the intuition of pattern, the brain is constantly solving for what happens next. Think of it as a kind of gentle arithmetic of expectation. Each moment adds to the sum of what you already know. Sometimes this talent betrays us. You've probably experienced hearing your phone buzz, only to realize it never did. A ghost vibration produced by your mind's anticipation. Or maybe you've misheard a phrase in conversation because you filled in what you expected to hear. These small illusions are reminders that the observer inside doesn't merely watch the world, it predicts it. And occasionally, those predictions are wrong. Anil Seth, a neuroscientist who studies consciousness, describes this process as a controlled hallucination. The phrase sounds dramatic, but its meaning is simple. Perception is a guided dream shaped by sensory input. When the dream aligns closely with the world, we call it reality. When it diverges, we call it illusion. The distinction is one of degree, not kind. Your brain is always dreaming, even with your eyes open. But there's comfort in that. It means your experience of reality is not something fragile or fake. It's alive, adaptive, endlessly creative. It means the witness within you isn't trapped behind the eyes like a camera lens. It's an artist, blending memory, imagination, and sensation into one continuous picture. The world you experience is less like an external photograph and more like a painting that repaints itself with every breath. This is why two people can share a moment and live entirely different versions of it. Imagine standing beside a friend at the edge of the ocean. You both look out at the same horizon. To your friend, the sea might appear cold, endless, tinged with melancholy. To you, it feels open, filled with possibility. The difference isn't in the waves, it's in the worlds your minds are predicting behind them. Each observer brings a lifetime of memories, emotions, and expectations to that single view. The same light, falling on two eyes, creates two universes, yet, beneath all those personal differences, something deeper holds steady. The act of prediction itself, the rhythm of noticing, expecting, and correcting, is shared by all conscious beings. It's the universal language of awareness. Whether it's a human watching the sea or a cat waiting for a rustle in the grass, the same principle hums below, an inner model of the world constantly being compared to the world itself. You could think of it as a kind of cosmic dialogue. The universe whispers through your senses, and your mind whispers back through its expectations. Reality emerges not from one side or the other, but from the quiet meeting point where those whispers overlap. In that sense, you and the universe are co-authors, writing and rewriting the same story in every moment. There's a beautiful humility in seeing perception this way. It softens the edges of certainty. When you remember that your vision, your hearing, your beliefs are all interpretations, approximations of truth, it becomes easier to listen, to wonder, to let others' perspectives coexist with yours. The world stops being a solid thing you must defend and becomes a shared mystery you're helping to compose. Tonight, as you listen to the soft sounds around you, the ticking of a clock, the whisper of air through a vent, maybe the faint rhythm of your own breathing, you can sense this creative pulse at work. Each sound isn't just entering your awareness, it's being interpreted, compared, and folded into the gentle narrative your mind builds of this very moment. The window of perception isn't fixed, it's alive, reshaping itself as you listen. The next time you open your eyes and look at something familiar, a loved one's face, the pattern of sunlight across your floor, pause for a moment and remember, you're not just seeing it, you're predicting it, sculpting it, breathing it into existence. The world is not separate from your awareness of it. It's the duet you perform with the cosmos, one note at a time, one breath after another. And as the melody continues, you might wonder, if the act of observing can subtly shape what is observed, what else might awareness be capable of? Could the quiet observer within not only interpret reality, but also influence it in ways we have barely begun to understand? Imagine two painters standing before the same sunrise. One paints it in gentle pastels, the sky melting from pink to gold, the ocean quiet as glass. The other paints it with fiery oranges and deep shadows, as if the world itself were burning awake. Both are honest. Both are seeing truly. Yet they create two entirely different dawns. That's how perception works. Each of us looks through a lens shaped by our own history, emotion, and attention. We don't just see the world, we interpret it. The inner observer, that quiet witness inside, filters every colour, sound, and memory through a personal prism, tinting reality in ways we rarely notice. If you and a friend walk together through a crowded market, you might be drawn to the smell of coffee while they hear the rhythm of drums from a distant stall. You share the same air, the same space, but not the same experience. In a sense, there are as many worlds as there are witnesses. This idea isn't only poetic, it's something science has repeatedly confirmed. Our senses don't deliver reality to us whole, They translate it, reshape it, fill in what's missing. Think of the rubber hand illusion, a simple yet astonishing experiment. A person places one hand on a table and hides it behind a screen. In front of them sits a fake rubber hand. When both the hidden real hand and the visible fake one are stroked at the same time, the brain merges the sensations. Within moments, the person begins to feel that the rubber hand is their own. Their mind has rewritten the boundaries of the self. The lesson isn't about trickery, it's about flexibility. The sense of I is not a fixed thing. It's an ongoing creation, rebuilt every second. The observer doesn't simply inhabit the body, it helps define it. Awareness reaches outward, drawing a border between this is me and this is not, adjusting that border as new information arrives. Sometimes the line moves without us noticing. You can see this same principle in a more mysterious phenomenon known as the out-of-body experience. In certain neurological studies, when a small region near the back of the brain, an area that helps the mind orient itself in space, is gently stimulated, people report a strange feeling, as though they are hovering just behind or above their own bodies, watching from a short distance away. For a few moments, the perspective shifts, and the witness steps outside the skin it normally calls home. It sounds like magic, but it isn't. It's another glimpse into how awareness constructs its point of view. The mind keeps a living model of where you are in space, like a silent GPS that updates constantly. When that model is disrupted, even briefly, the entire sense of being inside your body can slip. The map flickers, and the self appears to float free. What these illusions and experiments tell us is profound. The observer is not a thing located in one place, but a process, a pattern of coordination between perception, memory, and expectation. You are both the map and the landscape it describes. The line between inner and outer, self and world, is drawn not in stone but in sand. You can feel the shifting border even in ordinary moments. Think of how music can pull you out of yourself. A song begins softly, and suddenly you're no longer a separate listener but part of the sound. Or think of laughter shared with a friend. How for a second the you and them dissolve into a single rhythm of joy. Awareness expands, blending what's inside with what's beyond. Then the moment passes, and the familiar outline of self returns. Even memory plays by these rules. Two people recalling the same childhood day will tell different stories. Each remembers not only what happened, but how it felt. The emotional colour of that memory reshapes its form. One might recall sunlight and laughter, the other remembers dust and silence. Each version is true to the observer who lived it. In this way, the mind isn't a window opening onto the world. It's a lens that bends light uniquely for every soul. The philosopher William James once said, "My experience is what I agree to attend to." He meant that consciousness is selective by nature. Attention doesn't just notice life, it chooses which version of a life to bring forth. Even colour, one of the simplest sensations, reveals this subjectivity. The wavelength of light hitting your eyes is only half the story. The rest is interpretation. Tiny variations in context, the surrounding hues, the quality of light, even your emotional state, can shift how you perceive the same colour. A shade of grey can appear blue at dusk, or warm brown under a candle's glow. Your brain quietly recalculates the scene, painting the world anew with each glance. This adaptability is not a flaw. It's the mind's great strength. It allows you to navigate a changing world with creativity rather than rigidity. The same mechanism that can confuse a rubber, hand for your own, also lets you imagine standing in someone else's shoes, feeling what they feel. Empathy is, in a sense, the conscious use of illusion. It's the mind's power to reshape its boundaries deliberately. When you look at someone you love, you're not just seeing their face, you're sensing their presence, their emotions, their unspoken world. That sensitivity requires the witness to reach beyond itself, to merge momentarily with another's reality. In that merging lies connection, compassion and meaning. Still, it's humbling to realize how much of what we call the world is born inside the mind. Reality is not simply found, it is constructed. Each of us is an artist painting from the same palette of sensations but with entirely different strokes. The quiet observer inside you is both viewer and creator, constantly blending perception and imagination into something that feels solid, familiar, true. Perhaps that's why art, music and storytelling move us so deeply. They remind us that the world we experience is always partly a work of imagination, a shared illusion that feels beautifully, achingly real. Every time you lose yourself in a story, you're practicing the same miracle your mind performs each day, transforming patterns of sound, colour and memory into living meaning. If you step back now and think about the two painters at dawn, one capturing fire, the other peace, you might see them differently. They aren't just depicting their world, they're revealing the inner landscapes through which their worlds are seen. The sunrise doesn't change, but the eyes that behold it do. And through those eyes, the universe paints itself twice, once outside and once within. And so, awareness continues its quiet work, building bridges between observers, weaving countless worlds into a single shimmering tapestry of experience. Each of us holds a corner of that fabric, each thread vital to the pattern, each witness shaping the light that makes the whole thing glow. There is a quiet rhythm that runs through life. The changing of light across a single day, the shift of seasons, the pulse of breath rising and falling. Everything moves, and yet within that movement, something endures. It is the same awareness that noticed your first childhood memory and now listens to these words. The same silent witness that once watched through the wide eyes of youth continues to watch through the calm of maturity. The body has changed, the mind has grown and forgotten, but the observer remains. If you close your eyes and drift back to a distant moment, perhaps the first time you stood by the ocean, or the day you learned to ride a bicycle, you can recall fragments, the sound of waves, the colour of the sky, the rush of wind. But beyond all those details, there is also a subtle recognition. I was there, and the one who remembers is somehow the same as the one who remembers now. That continuity, delicate but unbroken, is the heartbeat of consciousness itself. Everything you perceive arises and dissolves. Thoughts appear, linger, and fade like ripples on a pond. Emotions swell, then pass. The world outside you shifts constantly, and even the cells in your body are replaced over time, yet awareness seems untouched. It observes the parade of change but never joins it. The witness watches birth and death, joy and grief, all unfolding like waves against an unmoving shore. Science, too, has been fascinated by this sense of unity amid change. When researchers measure the brain's activity, they find that consciousness doesn't belong to one place or one signal. Instead, it emerges from the harmony between many regions working together, a vast network in tune with itself. Some call this integrated information, though that phrase sounds far too mechanical for what it represents. You could imagine it instead as a choir. Each neuron sings its own note, but when enough voices join in harmony, a new sound arises. Not the sum of the parts, but something larger, luminous, whole. If you've ever stood in a cathedral as music swelled through the space, you know this feeling. The individual instruments become indistinguishable. All you hear is resonance, a sound that seems to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. That resonance is what awareness might be like within the brain, a field of perfect synchronization where many small movements merge into one song. Yet, even this song isn't static. The harmony shifts second by second, responding to new experiences, memories, and sensations. What remains constant is not the pattern itself, but the capacity to experience it the open field in which all these notes appear and disappear. Consciousness, then, may be less like a fixed melody and more like the silence that allows music to exist at all. Without silence, sound is chaos. Without awareness, experience cannot form. You can feel this silence even in the busiest moment. Sit quietly for a moment and notice the hum of thoughts running through your mind. Beneath them, there's a deeper quiet, a stillness that doesn't belong to the thoughts themselves, but to the space that holds them. When a thought ends, that stillness remains, waiting patiently for the next one. It is always there, whether you notice it or not, like the sky that remains blue even when covered by clouds. This idea that awareness endures beneath change is not just poetic. It's something the brain hints at in subtle ways. Different experiences activate different neural patterns, but when people rest, meditate, or fall into reflective calm, certain brain areas begin to synchronize in a steady rhythm. It's as though, beneath the chatter, the brain hums a single continuous note, a signature of the ever-present witness. Philosophers have long wondered what this continuity means. Does it suggest that consciousness is something fundamental, a property of the universe itself? Or is it simply the result of a mind weaving memories together into a coherent story? No one knows for sure, but the feeling of being the same I from birth to this moment is undeniable, as if awareness itself were untouched by time, even while everything it observes ages and fades. To explore this, imagine standing on a riverbank. The water before you flows endlessly, fast, bright, full of reflections. You dip your hand in and lift it, and the river slides past, never the same twice. The current you touched a moment ago has already moved on, yet you remain on the same bank looking at the same river. The scene is different every second, but the act of looking, of witnessing, remains constant. You could return years later, and though the water and even the landscape will have changed, the quiet observer within would still be there, watching. That observer cannot be found under a microscope. It has no weight or shape. But you can feel it every time you pause long enough to notice that you're noticing. It's the calm point around which experience revolves. You might call it the eye of the storm, the unmoving centre within the spinning winds of perception. If you pay attention, you can sense that this awareness doesn't begin or end when thoughts begin or end. When you wake from sleep, it feels as if consciousness returns, yet in truth, it may have simply shifted its focus, the way a stage light dims and then brightens again. The stage itself, that field of potential, never disappeared. Some traditions speak of this continuity as the soul, the unchanging essence that carries experience across lifetimes. Science, cautious but curious, describes it as a stable pattern of neural integration, the mind's ability to maintain a unified field despite endless internal changes. Whichever description you prefer, the mystery remains the same. There is something within you that feels steady even as the rest of you flows. Perhaps awareness is not a single flame, but the space in which all flames burn, a space that cannot itself be consumed. When you lose yourself in music, art, or conversation, that space briefly expands, becoming one with the experience. When the moment ends, the space closes again, but its depth remains unchanged. Try resting in that feeling now. Let your attention settle like dust drifting down through still air. Notice the quiet background behind each sound. The hum of the room, your own breath, the beat of your heart, all arise within the same spacious awareness. That space does not compete with what it contains. It allows it. Every whisper of change is embraced by something that does not change. If you listen closely enough, this realization becomes gentle, almost comforting. You begin to sense that awareness is not a visitor in your life, but its constant home. The sky beneath every storm, the silence beneath every word. the witness behind every scene. It has always been here, quietly watching, softly enduring, the constant amid all change. Somewhere in the quiet machinery of your brain, billions of small electrical whispers are travelling every second. Tiny sparks leaping from cell to cell, forming the intricate language of thought. If you could listen to them, it might sound like wind moving through a vast forest, each tree swaying on its own, yet somehow keeping time with all the others. Most of the time, this immense network behaves like one unified mind. But sometimes, when nature or surgery disrupts its connections, the curtain lifts on something truly strange, a glimpse of how many selves can live within a single skull. In the mid-20th century, neurosurgeons working with patients who suffered from extreme epilepsy discovered that cutting a deep bundle of nerves between the two halves of the brain could prevent seizures from spreading. These operations, called split brain procedures, were meant purely to help patients function better. But afterward, psychologists began to notice something almost unbelievable. The people who underwent the surgery could walk, talk, and live seemingly normal lives, yet in certain situations their two brain hemispheres appear to act like independent minds. When scientists covered one of a patient's eyes and showed a picture to the other, only one half of the brain received the image. If the picture of a key appeared to the left eye, the right hemisphere could identify it but had no language to speak. The patient might say, "I see nothing," while the left hand, controlled by that silent hemisphere, would reach out and pick up a key from a pile of objects. It was as though two observers shared the same body, one verbal and one wordless, each with its own window onto the world. For a moment, imagine what that must feel like. One part of you seeing, another part unaware, one acting, another denying. Where then is the true you? Are there two witnesses, or one awareness divided by the architecture of the brain? The question is more than curiosity. It invites us to wonder whether consciousness is a single flame or a constellation of smaller lights burning in harmony. Even in ordinary brains, this division is quietly at work. The left and right hemispheres specialize in different kinds of attention. One more detail-oriented, the other more holistic. One focused on language, the other on tone and space. Together, they weave a seamless picture. But the unity you feel, the sense of being one continuous self, is something the mind constructs moment by moment. You are, in a way, a story the brain keeps telling itself, editing and stitching fragments together faster than you can notice the seams. Yet somehow, even when the stitching phrase, awareness persists. In split-brain patients, the halves may act separately, but both share a strange undercurrent of wholeness. The body still moves as one, the person still laughs, grieves, and loves as a single being. There seems to be a deeper level of unity that transcends the divided mechanics above it, as if two candles were burning from the same wick. Another window into this mystery comes from people with what scientists call blind sight. These are individuals who, after damage to certain visual areas of the brain, report complete blindness in part of their field of view. If you ask them what they see, they insist, nothing at all. Yet, when asked to guess whether a line on a screen is vertical or horizontal, they often guess correctly, far better than chance. Their eyes still capture light, their brain still processes it. The only thing missing is the experience of seeing. The conscious spotlight has turned off, but the machinery beneath it continues to operate in darkness. This phenomenon hints at a profound truth. Awareness and processing are not the same. The mind can register, interpret, even respond to information without the witness ever knowing. Consciousness seems to be the moment when certain signals are invited onto the grand stage of awareness, illuminated long enough to become part of your story. Beneath that stage, countless unseen actors continue to move and speak, Their performance is essential but unacknowledged. You might wonder why the brain bothers to have this inner stage at all. Why not just let everything happen automatically? The answer may lie in communication. When information is broadcast across the mind, made globally available, so to speak, it allows perception, memory, and intention to coordinate. It turns countless independent murmurs into one shared melody. You could think of this as the brain's version of democracy, many voices, but one conversation. Consciousness, then, is not the noise of those voices, but the coherence that binds them. There's something comforting about this idea. Even when your thoughts conflict, when one part of you wants to rest and another insists on working, when reason argues with emotion, there is still a larger awareness that holds both sides. The witness does not need them to agree, it simply listens, and in that listening, they slowly find harmony. Unity doesn't mean absence of division. It means a deeper level of connection that allows the divisions to coexist. You can feel this wholeness if you watch your own mind carefully. Notice how a memory arises, perhaps a face, a sound, a scent, followed by an emotion, a judgment, a plan. Each component comes from a different network, a different region, yet all of them converge effortlessly into one seamless moment of you. The coordination is so smooth it feels inevitable, but it's not. It's a miracle happening in every breath, separate systems blending into a single field of awareness. When viewed this way, the self becomes less a fixed object and more a dynamic relationship, a conversation between many parts speaking through one voice. You are not the sum of those parts. You are the awareness in which their dialogue unfolds. Even when the conversation grows noisy, the field that contains it remains silent, steady, vast. There's an old metaphor that describes this perfectly. Imagine waves on the surface of an ocean. Each wave rises and falls, distinct in shape and timing, yet all are made of the same water. The brain's countless processes are like those waves, separate for a moment, yet inseparable in essence. Consciousness is the ocean itself, deep, fluid, indivisible. As you listen now, you might feel that ocean inside you, a swell of thoughts rising and falling, the undercurrent of calm beneath them. No matter how the surface changes, the depth remains still. That depth is what connects the two hemispheres of a divided brain, the conscious and the unseen, the reasoning and the feeling, the finite and the infinite. It is the quiet unity that makes you whole. Perhaps that's what awareness truly is, not a single voice or region, but the simple fact that everything within you belongs to the same silence. Even when the mind splits itself into 1,000 fragments, that silence gathers them back together. It does not speak, yet it understands. It does not move, yet it holds all movement. It is the thread that binds every thought, the listener behind every voice. And if you follow that thread long enough, gently and patiently, it may lead you to an even deeper realization that this same unity you feel within yourself might not stop at the edges of your skin. It could be the same quiet field that hums beneath all minds, a single presence dreaming itself in countless forms. Imagine for a moment that everything you know, the sights, sounds, thoughts, and emotions, simply continued on their own. The body moves, the heart beats, the lungs rise and fall, the world outside hums with activity. But something essential is missing. There's no one home behind the eyes, no inner you watching it all unfold. What would that world be like? Would it exist at all if no one were there to know it? It's an unsettling thought, the idea of the witness vanishing, leaving only the silent machinery of experience. But it helps reveal what consciousness really means. The brain is capable of immense complexity without awareness. Even simple organisms, tiny worms, bacteria, plants, navigate, react, and survive using elegant chemistry and pattern. Yet none of them, as far as we can tell, Feel what it's like to be themselves. Something extraordinary happens when awareness awakens. Reality changes from being something that merely happens to something that is known. If you've ever gone under anesthesia, you might remember the sudden nothingness of it. Not darkness, not sleep, but absence. One moment, the world is there. The next, it's gone. And then, as if skipping a line in a book, you wake to find time has passed without you. The brain never stopped working. It was monitoring, maintaining, repairing, but the witness was gone. And when the witness is gone, time itself ceases to exist for you. The minutes and hours that pass on the clock simply never happened in your reality. The experience of being requires that someone somewhere be aware. It raises a question. If the act of observing gives shape to reality in the mind, what happens when that act ceases? Is the world outside still there in the same way? Or does its meaning dissolve when no awareness holds it together? We can't truly know because we can't step outside awareness to test it. The observer cannot leave its own stage. The moment it does, the curtain closes and the theatre vanishes. This mystery, the impossibility of consciousness seeing its own absence, is one of philosophy's oldest puzzles. You can imagine awareness as a candle that illuminates everything it touches but cannot shine directly on its own flame. If the flame went out, there would be no light left even to notice the darkness. That's why the question, what happens when the witness disappears, isn't just theoretical. It's the limit of what can be asked at all. Some scientists describe this paradox in gentler terms. They say consciousness may not be an add-on to the universe, but a fundamental property, like space or gravity, something that doesn't vanish but simply changes its pattern of expression. When the body sleeps, awareness contracts. When the mind awakens, it expands. Like the tide, it withdraws and returns. But even at low tide, the ocean hasn't gone anywhere. The shore simply looks different. Others take a more biological view. They see consciousness as the brain's way of unifying countless small processes, perception, memory, emotion, into one coherent story. If the storyteller disappears, the story continues in fragments, each still functioning but without the thread that binds them. The orchestra still plays, but no one listens for harmony. The music becomes noise. You can sense this division faintly in daily life. Think of moments when you're so lost in a task that you forget yourself, typing, driving, cleaning, until suddenly you wake up mid-action. For those few minutes, consciousness was operating on autopilot. The body moved correctly, decisions were made, yet there's a gap in memory, a stretch of unobserved time. Awareness dipped below the surface, leaving the world to its routines. When it returns, you feel the quiet shock of presence, the rediscovery of I am here. Dreamless sleep is another taste of this absence. The brain remains active, regulating heartbeat and hormones, consolidating memories, but there is no inner witness. Then, in dreams, awareness flickers back like a small flame, unsteady, surreal, painting images out of memory. In that boundary between sleep and waking, you can feel how delicate consciousness is, a light that fades and returns without you noticing the transitions. Across spiritual traditions, people have tried to approach this vanishing point in different ways. In deep meditation, practitioners sometimes describe losing the sense of self completely, merging with stillness. They report no thoughts, no boundaries, no separation between observer and observed. Yet when they return, they speak of it as peaceful rather than frightening, a reminder that even the disappearance of I may not be a loss, but a return to something wider. You might imagine awareness as the surface of a lake. When the wind blows, waves form, and you can see the play of light across them. The movement is life, thoughts, sensations, emotions. But sometimes the wind stops and the surface becomes perfectly still. In that stillness, there are no reflections, no ripples, yet the lake remains, deep and clear beneath. The witness hasn't died, it has simply become transparent. Perhaps this is what death itself feels like, not an ending, but a deep stillness beyond observation. Science can trace the signals fading, the heartbeat slowing, the electrical rhythms falling silent. But what happens to awareness, the sense of I am, remains unmeasurable. Some say it vanishes with the body. Others, with quiet hope, imagine it joining a greater field of consciousness that never began and never ends. Whichever is true, it reminds us how precious the act of noticing is, this moment of seeing, hearing, feeling and knowing that you exist. It also brings a gentle humility. Every thought, every perception is balanced on the edge of non-existence, a fleeting shimmer between silence and awareness. The world you know depends on the fragile miracle of being conscious. Without it, even the sun would rise to darkness. Right now, as you listen, you can sense both sides of that miracle. The movement of thought and the stillness behind it. If you stop trying to analyze and simply rest in the awareness itself, you might feel how fragile yet complete it is. You're not forcing the world to exist, you're quietly witnessing it. And in that witnessing, reality takes form. The mind observes and the world answers. No equation or theory can fully explain this exchange. It's not written in numbers or chemical symbols, but in the silent language of experience. Awareness is the canvas. Existence is the brushstroke. Each moment paints itself into being only because it is seen. And perhaps that is the secret. The universe awakens through every living witness, each tiny flame of consciousness reflecting the whole. So if the witness were ever to disappear, maybe the world would not end. It would simply rest, waiting for awareness to rise again. The way morning waits for the light, not knowing that the sun and the seeing of it are one and the same. There's a small moment that happens every time you move, so fast that you never notice it. You reach for a glass of water, and before, your hand even lifts, something inside you has already begun the motion. It feels natural, effortless. But if you pause to think about it, you might wonder, who decided to move first, the body or the awareness watching it? For decades, scientists have quietly tried to answer that question. In the late 20th century, a group of researchers noticed something curious when they asked volunteers to perform a simple act: flex a finger whenever they felt like it. The volunteers were to note the exact moment they became aware of deciding. Electrodes recorded the brain's subtle electrical activity. To the researchers' surprise, the brain showed signs of preparing the movement before the volunteers reported deciding. It was as though the body began humming the tune a fraction of a second before the mind joined in. At first, this seemed to suggest something unsettling, that free will was an illusion, that we were passengers in our own lives, watching actions we didn't truly initiate. But later studies softened that view. The early brain signals weren't commands. They were more like ripples of readiness, small waves forming before a surfer decides to catch them. Awareness, it seemed, wasn't being fooled. It was joining the flow at precisely the right moment. Think of it this way. Every choice is a collaboration between many layers of yourself. The deeper parts of the brain gather information, sense the environment, predict outcomes. Then, at the surface of consciousness, the witness chooses which wave to ride. The brain hums, and awareness listens for the right note. When the two align, motion begins, not as a forced act, but as a dance between impulse and intention. You can feel this cooperation in daily life. When you walk, you don't consciously instruct each muscle. When you speak, you don't plan every syllable. The words seem to appear at the moment they're needed. The thinker and the doer are part of the same movement, arising together. The mind isn't a general commanding an army. It's more like a conductor joining an orchestra that was already playing, guiding its rhythm with gentle precision. Imagine a surfer waiting in calm water. The ocean beneath is full of potential, currents building, waves forming far beyond sight. The surfer senses them not by calculation but by intuition. A slight swell, a change in pressure, a rhythm deep beneath the surface, and then, at just the right moment, they move. They don't create the wave, they meet it. That moment of meeting is what awareness feels like when you decide to act. The body is prepared, the mind has attuned, and suddenly, choice and movement become one. This cooperation between readiness and intention shows up even in the smallest gestures. When you reach for a door handle, the hand begins to move as your mind decides. It's a near-perfect overlap, so seamless that you can't tell where decision ends and action begins. The ancient philosopher Aristotle once said that the soul is the form of the body, not something separate, but the organizing principle that brings motion to life. Modern science, in its own quiet way, seems to agree. The boundary between thought and action may be thinner than we imagine. It's helpful to think of the brain not as a single commander, but as a chorus. Deep rhythmic regions keep time, predicting what's about to happen. Higher regions harmonize, planning, adjusting, anticipating. And awareness, the conscious witness, steps in not to dictate, but to choose how to ride the melody. You might call it participatory freedom, the ability to guide the current rather than control it. This understanding changes how we view responsibility and effort. If the body begins preparing before the conscious decision, then perhaps the real freedom lies not in initiating action, but in shaping it as it unfolds. You can sense this in creativity. A musician improvising doesn't plan each note in advance. Their fingers move almost on their own, yet awareness listens, adjusts, shapes the flow. The mind follows something deeper than deliberate thought, a stream of readiness it has learned to trust. Even in meditation, this principle reveals itself. The more you try to control thoughts, the faster they scatter. But when you simply notice them, without forcing or following, they settle on their own. The subtle hand of awareness guides not by pushing, but by allowing. Choice happens within flow, not against it. There's an image that captures this perfectly. A leaf floating downstream. It doesn't command the current, yet its direction isn't random. It follows the natural path, tilting, turning, adjusting to every ripple. In the same way, consciousness doesn't generate every motion from scratch. It moves with the current of life, making small, graceful corrections. Awareness is not an isolated spark, but part of a vast rhythm, one that begins before thought and continues beyond it. When seen this way, the Libet experiments, those faint hums before motion, are not evidence of loss of control, but evidence of cooperation. The brain, like an orchestra, begins its prelude. The conductor, awareness, listens and joins at the perfect cue. The music of life doesn't require a single author. It thrives on coordination. Think of times when your actions felt effortless. A conversation that flowed, a dance that needed no counting, a drive home where every turn came naturally. Those moments are glimpses of harmony between the quiet readiness of the body and the observing awareness of the mind. You weren't passive, but you also weren't struggling. You were in tune. This gentle collaboration hints at a deeper truth. Perhaps freedom isn't about absolute control, but about resonance. You're free not because you create every wave, but because you can choose which ones to surf and how. The more awareness aligns with the natural intelligence of the body, the more graceful life becomes. Even the simple act of breathing follows this dance. Most of the time, it happens without thought. Yet, at any moment, you can join it, slowing, deepening, feeling it flow. The breath welcomes your awareness like the ocean welcomes the surfer. You don't command it, you merge with it. So the next time you move your hand, take a breath, or decide to speak, Notice the soft whisper that comes before the action, that subtle hum of readiness. It's the body inviting the witness to join in. The wave is forming. The choice is not to create it, but to meet it with awareness, to ride it with grace. And in that meeting, body and mind, motion and stillness, anticipation and decision, all become one seamless flow of being. There is a kind of strength that doesn't come from movement or willpower, but from stillness. It's not the stillness of stone or silence, but the kind that feels alive, a deep pause within which everything becomes clear. You might have touched it in small, quiet moments, when you finally sit down after a long day, when you hold your breath before answering a difficult question, or when you wake in the middle of the night and, for a few seconds, the world feels weightless. In that pause, reality seems to breathe with you. This living stillness is where awareness begins to shape the world. Not by force, not by controlling outcomes, but by changing how things unfold simply through the quality of attention. It's almost paradoxical. The less you try to interfere, the more gently everything aligns. Think of watching dust swirl in a beam of sunlight. If you wave your hand through it, the particles scatter wildly. But if you stay still, they drift in smooth, hypnotic spirals, forming patterns you never would have seen otherwise. The mind works the same way. When you chase every thought, correcting, arguing, analysing, the movement becomes chaotic. But when you observe without reaction, the chaos begins to arrange itself. Thoughts slow down, feelings soften. The pattern of awareness itself becomes visible, calm, connected, luminous. This principle, simple yet profound, lies at the heart of many contemplative practices. For thousands of years, people have discovered that by sitting quietly, focusing on the breath, and watching the flow of thoughts without judgment, something subtle changes. It's not the world outside that transforms first. It's the lens through which the world is seen. When scientists began studying meditation, they expected to find only signs of relaxation. What they found instead was far deeper. In the quiet minds of experienced meditators, certain brain regions, those that chatter endlessly about the self, that replay the past and rehearse the future, began to settle. The restless hum of self-referential thinking grew softer, while regions tied to awareness and empathy became more synchronized. It was as if the brain, when given permission to rest, started humming in harmony again. No formulas are needed to understand what those scans mean. You can feel it right now. When your breathing slows and your shoulders drop, when attention turns from the noise outside to the stillness within, something aligns. The scattered parts of experience begin to move together. You don't become blank or empty. You become present. It's almost like cleaning a fogged mirror. The fog isn't the problem. It's part of the environment. But when you stop breathing directly onto the glass, the reflection clears on its own. Meditation, mindfulness, prayer, even moments of simple silence all work this way. They don't erase thought. They allow the natural clarity of awareness to emerge. You don't have to sit on a mountain to experience this. You can practice it while waiting in line, listening to music or washing dishes. Stillness isn't about escaping motion. It's about discovering a calm center that moves with everything else. The sound of water, the warmth of soap, the simple rhythm of your hands. When awareness rests fully in those sensations, time itself seems to widen. The task becomes effortless, even beautiful. This kind of stillness doesn't remove emotion, it transforms it. Anger, when watched without feeding it, begins to cool. Fear, when held gently in attention, starts to unfold into understanding. Even pain changes texture when seen clearly. It doesn't always disappear, but it becomes bearable, meaningful, part of the larger flow of being. Awareness acts as a balm, not curing, but caring. Many traditions describe this process as awakening, not a sudden revelation, but a quiet remembering. You remember what you are beneath the noise, a field of presence, capable of observing everything without being consumed by it. The more you rest in that space, the more your perception shifts. The world stops feeling like something outside you and starts feeling like something you are participating in, breathing with, living through. There's a gentle power hidden here, one that modern science is only beginning to notice. When people cultivate calm awareness, not only does their perception change, but their physiology changes too. Heart rate steadies, stress hormones decrease, immune response strengthens, even the expression of certain genes begins to shift, as though the cells themselves are listening to the silence within. Stillness, it seems, is not a void but a signal, a deep harmony that the body recognizes. It's the same harmony you can sense in nature. Watch a forest after rain. Everything glistens. Droplets cling to leaves. The air holds its breath. That stillness isn't absence, it's fullness. Every living thing, from the smallest insect to the tallest tree, is quietly adjusting, renewing, preparing to grow. Awareness in stillness is the same, fertile, attentive, ready. Try a small experiment right now. Close your eyes if you can and take a slow breath. Feel the air move through your body, not just the lungs, but the entire rhythm of expansion and release. Then listen for what lies beneath the breath, the quiet background hum of being alive. Stay with it for a moment. That hum has been there all your life. It doesn't belong to any single thought or feeling. It's the sound of presence itself. From this stillness, life flows more gracefully. You begin to respond rather than react. You notice small details, the way light falls through a window, the tone in a loved one's voice, and those details start to feel significant, alive. Awareness turns everyday moments into small miracles. The paradox of stillness is that it's not passive. It's an act of participation without interference, of listening so deeply that the world begins to speak back. When you are truly still, you don't stop shaping reality. You start shaping it more precisely, with gentleness instead of force. Like a painter who pauses before each brushstroke, or a musician who lets silence give meaning to every note, the observer learns that the spaces between actions are what give life its rhythm. And perhaps this is what mindfulness, at its heart, really means. Not striving for perfection or control, but remembering that awareness itself changes what it touches. When you bring full attention to a moment, it becomes different. Not because the moment changed, but because you did. Stillness doesn't stop the world from turning. It helps you turn with it, effortlessly. It reminds you that awareness isn't apart from life. It's the calm current running through it. The more you rest in that current, the clearer everything becomes. The mind doesn't have to shout to make a difference. Sometimes it only needs to be quiet enough to listen. In that quiet, life reveals its own hidden intelligence, the soft choreography between your heartbeat, your breath, and the world breathing beside you. The silent witness resting in stillness becomes not just an observer, but a participant in creation, shaping reality not with effort, but with presence itself. When you wake in the morning and the light filters through the curtains, the world doesn't change, but the way you see it does. The same sunlight that might seem harsh on a rushed, tired day can appear gentle and golden when your heart is calm. The same sky can feel heavy or infinite depending on the eyes that meet it. It's easy to assume that reality stays constant while our moods shift like weather across its surface. But perhaps it's the other way around. Perhaps reality is not just what exists, but what awareness allows to exist in focus, shaped quietly by the act of noticing. You can feel this truth in small ways. Think of how two people can stand before the same painting and see entirely different things. One notices the colours, the brush strokes, the play of light. The other sees the emotion behind it, the quiet, loneliness between the figures. Both are true, but both are incomplete. The painting itself holds endless possibilities. What brings it to life is attention, the meeting of the observer and the observed. This meeting happens not only in art, but in every corner of daily life. The simple act of noticing something changes how it unfolds in your mind. When you focus on gratitude, the same morning routine, the kettle, the familiar cup, the smell of toast, takes on warmth and meaning. When you focus on frustration, those same moments tighten, each sound sharper, each delay heavier. Awareness doesn't invent the world, but it colours it. The way sunlight passing through a window tints the floor in gold or grey depending on the glass. Science hints at this too, though it speaks in quieter language. Our brains are limited in how much they can process at once. What becomes vivid is what we choose, consciously or not, to attend to. Attention works like a brush on the canvas of perception, broad and sweeping when relaxed, fine and precise when focused. What you notice becomes real to you. What you ignore fades into the background hum of existence, like the faint sound of the refrigerator you only hear when you start listening for it. This doesn't mean reality depends entirely on belief. The sun still rises, the rain still falls. But your experience of those things, your living world, depends deeply on where the observer places its gaze. A day spent looking for kindness reveals it everywhere. A day spent scanning for conflict will find that too. The world echoes the questions we ask of it. There's a gentle power in realizing this. Awareness becomes a kind of creative force, not mystical, but experiential. What you attend to expands. Like watering certain flowers in a garden, your attention nourishes them. If you tend only to weeds, the garden will still grow, but differently. When you attend to beauty, beauty multiplies. When you attend to fear, fear deepens its roots. Life listens closely to the direction of your gaze. You can try a small experiment right now. Think of one simple thing in your surroundings, perhaps a cup, a plant, or the way light touches a wall. For a few seconds, look at it as if you're seeing it for the first time. Notice its shape, its colour, its quiet existence. As your focus rests on it, the edges of your awareness begin to soften. You might feel the room change, not because the object moved, but because you did. Attention transforms perception, and in that transformation, something alive and reciprocal happens. The world seems to notice you back. Every living moment carries this subtle exchange. The observer gazes outward, and the world reflects the quality of that gaze. This is not philosophy, it's the quiet evidence of experience. A smile offered to a stranger changes the space between you both. A word spoken in kindness alters the air. Awareness is not passive. It radiates, influencing what it touches as light does. Ancient traditions have long hinted at this, describing consciousness as a mirror. The world, they say, is not merely outside you. It's reflected through the clarity or distortion of that mirror. When the mirror is fogged by fear or hurry, everything appears dim. When it's clean, even ordinary moments shine. The cleaning doesn't require effort, it requires presence. The more aware you are, the less the fog of thought clings to perception. This creative relationship between awareness and reality doesn't make us omnipotent. It doesn't mean every wish shapes the physical world, but it does remind us that every perspective shapes the felt world, the one we actually live in. Reality, at least as it's experienced, is both shared and personal. 10,000 minds observing the same sunrise will create 10,000 dawns, each illuminated by a slightly different kind of light. You can see this principle in the most intimate acts of perception. A scientist examining a cell under a microscope adjusts focus until the blur resolves into form. A photographer changes the lens, and suddenly what was background becomes subject. Similarly, consciousness holds its own kind of lens, adjustable not by machinery but by intention. Focus it on complaint, and the world contracts. Focus it on wonder, and it expands endlessly. This idea echoes even in physics, though the science remains humble about it. Experiments once showed that the act of observing can alter what is measured at the smallest scales of existence, light behaving differently when watched. Scientists debate the meaning, but the poetry of it is undeniable. Observation matters. The universe, in some quiet way, responds to being seen. Perhaps that's why acts of mindful attention feel sacred, even when simple. When you listen fully to a loved one, when you truly see the sky or the shape of a leaf, you are participating in creation itself, helping the universe know itself more clearly. Awareness, by its very nature, brings things into intimacy. The observer is not a detached spectator, but a co-creator of meaning. You don't have to force this, you only have to notice what you're noticing. The next time you walk outside, try shifting your attention just slightly, from what's wrong to what's beautiful, from what's missing to what's already here. Watch how the air changes, how your body relaxes, how the light seems a little softer. The world didn't transform overnight, you did. And through that subtle transformation, reality itself begins to shimmer differently. It may be that life has always been a kind of dialogue, awareness and existence speaking to each other through the language of experience. Every moment you observe with care, you answer back. Each breath, each glance, each quiet noticing is a reply to the universe's invitation to be seen. And somewhere in that ongoing conversation, the distinction between observer and observed begins to blur. Awareness and reality mirror each other, each reflecting the other's light. Perhaps that's the secret all along. You don't just live in the world also lives in you. Somewhere in the dark fabric of space, a star flickers, releasing light that will travel for billions of years before touching another eye. That light doesn't know it will one day meet a gaze, it simply shines. And yet, here you are, on a small blue planet, looking back at it. The universe, through your awareness, is watching itself. It's a thought that feels almost too large to hold. The same elements that form your body, carbon, calcium, oxygen, were forged in stars that burned and died long before Earth existed. Every cell, every breath, every heartbeat is part of a chain of transformation that began with cosmic fire. In a very real sense, you're not simply in the universe, you're made of its memory. The atoms that once drifted through nebulae now gather in the quiet rhythm of your pulse, and through the simple act of noticing, the cosmos becomes self-aware. This isn't poetry alone, it's physics and biology, softly translated into wonder. The hydrogen in your blood, the iron in your veins, the calcium in your bones, all born from the same stellar forges scattered across space. When astronomers look at the night sky, they are not just looking outward but backward in time, watching light that began its journey before the first humans took shape. You too carry that light, not in your eyes, but in your being. Awareness is the echo of the stars remembering themselves. Imagine for a moment that the universe is a vast ocean. Every wave that rises, every galaxy, every planet, every form of life is a temporary shape of that same water. When awareness awakens in one of those waves, even for an instant, the ocean begins to know itself. The wave says, "I am." And for that brief moment, infinity has a reflection. Science, in its quiet curiosity, has begun to ask whether this awareness might be more than an accident of biology. Across research labs, scientists study consciousness not as something mystical, but as something fundamental, woven into the fabric of existence. Some propose that awareness might be as universal as gravity or light, not a rare spark, but a property of reality itself. They are cautious, humble, still searching for language gentle enough to hold the mystery. But their work echoes an ancient intuition that consciousness might not merely arise within the universe, but that the universe itself might be conscious through us. If that idea feels too vast, try to sense it in smaller ways. Think of how awareness links everything. The same light that reflects off a mountain travels through your eye and is interpreted by your mind. The mountain, the light, the seeing, all connected in one continuous process. The observer and the observed are not separate, they are different faces of the same event. Awareness bridges the gap between matter and meaning, turning the cold geometry of space into the warmth of experience. You can sense this connection even in everyday life. When you stand under the night sky, the silence around you isn't empty, it hums. You can feel the faint vibration of life, of movement, of time flowing. You might not understand it, but something inside you recognizes it. That recognition is not analysis, it's belonging. The same awareness that looks up is made of the same material that shines down. Physicists once said that to measure something is to disturb it, to change it simply by observing. It was a technical truth at the smallest scale, but it carried a deeper whisper, that seeing is not separate from being. Observation is participation. When you look at the stars, the light entering your eyes completes a journey that began before your species existed. In that instant, you and the star are joined by the act of awareness, two ends of a cosmic thread tied together by attention. Even the instruments we build, telescopes, satellites, detectors, are extensions of that same curiosity. They are the universe designing tools to study its own depths. The questions we ask: what is dark matter? What is time? What is consciousness? Are the questions of the cosmos dreaming itself awake, and every discovery, whether of distant galaxies or the neurons within our skulls, is another mirror polished, another reflection coming into focus. Perhaps this is why awe feels so close to peace. When you look at something vast, an ocean, a mountain, a night filled with stars, and your thoughts fall silent for a moment, you've stepped into alignment with the universe's own awareness. The chatter of the small self pauses, and what remains is the quiet hum of being itself, recognizing itself. You can taste this experience anywhere, not only under starlight. When you listen deeply to music, when you lose yourself in art or love or prayer, something similar happens. The boundary between you and what you're perceiving softens. The observer and the observed blend into a single field of attention. The universe, through you, is aware of its own beauty. This awareness isn't grand or loud. It doesn't announce itself. It's more like a whisper beneath all existence, a thread of quiet understanding woven through matter and time. You don't have to believe in it. You only have to feel the calm that comes when you realize that everything you notice, from the warmth of your skin to the cold glow of a distant planet, is part of the same continuum. When scientists map galaxies, they find patterns that resemble the structure of neural networks in the brain. It's not proof of anything mystical, but it's a haunting symmetry, the macrocosm mirroring the microcosm. Perhaps it's coincidence, or perhaps the universe repeats its favourite designs, from the smallest synapse to the largest cluster of stars. Either way, the pattern is beautiful. Billions of connections lighting up in the dark, forming constellations of thought and matter that may not be as different as they appear. So when you gaze at the night sky and feel that strange pull of recognition, know that it's not just imagination. The atoms in your eyes were born from the same kind of fires that now burn light years away. The awareness that witnesses them is their echo made conscious. You are, quite literally, the universe taking a moment to see itself and to wonder. And maybe that's what awareness truly is. Not a phenomenon locked inside the skull, but the cosmos peering inward, curious about its own existence. Every thought, every perception, every question is a ripple in that great act of recognition. You're both the question and the answer, both the seeker and the sought. When you realize this, even the smallest moment, the flicker of a candle, the movement of your breath becomes cosmic. The stars are not distant anymore, they are within you, waiting to be seen. And as you see them, they shine a little brighter, as if grateful to be known. When you wake in the middle of the night before memory fully returns and the world has names again, there is a small, wordless moment, a single breath of pure awareness. You don't yet remember who you are, what day it is, or what tasks await you. There is only the gentle rhythm of being alive. In that brief pause before thoughts gather, you are closer than ever to the quiet observer within, the one who simply knows, without needing to think. This quiet presence is always here, hidden behind layers of doing and remembering. It's not something to create or summon. It's the awareness that has been watching since the beginning. When you were a child staring at clouds, when you first felt love, when you last sat in silence. Even now, as words form in your mind, it is the space that holds them. Recognizing it is less about effort and more about remembering. Like noticing the background hum of a refrigerator after it's been running all along, awareness appears when you stop searching for it. The more you chase it, the farther it seems. But the moment you pause, breathe, and simply allow the present to unfold, it quietly steps forward, as if it had been waiting for you to look. You don't need a ritual for this recognition. You can find it while walking, listening, waiting for a bus, or sipping tea. All it asks is that you stop, just for a moment, and notice what it feels like to be. Not to think about being, but to feel it. The warmth in your hands, the rise and fall of breath, the simple fact of existing. This is where awareness lives, not in thought, but in presence. Try this gently. As you breathe in, sense the air entering not only your lungs, but the whole field of your attention. Feel how each inhale expands the space of awareness slightly, and each exhale softens it. There's no right way to breathe. The breath is not a task, it's a reminder. It shows you that life happens on its own, without your constant supervision. Awareness doesn't need to control, it only needs to notice. Sometimes, noticing takes courage. It means watching without interference, seeing discomfort, sadness, or uncertainty without immediately trying to fix them. Yet this simple act of witnessing is transformative. When you truly see something, without judgment, its grip loosens. The emotion or thought is no longer the whole sky. It's just a passing cloud. You remain the open space behind it. Modern research on mindfulness gently confirms what ancient teachers always knew. Awareness changes the mind simply by being aware. When people practice observing their thoughts without reaction, the regions of the brain responsible for fear and stress grow quieter. The patterns of habit and reactivity begin to soften. The brain learns, slowly and beautifully, to respond instead of to react. It's not magic, it's biology guided by attention. But even that scientific language only points to something more intimate. The quiet power of being with yourself fully, without escaping. The mind can be noisy, full of static and memory, but beneath that noise there is a constant gentle stillness. You don't have to reach it. You only have to stop identifying with the noise. Like tuning a radio away from static, the moment you relax your grip on thoughts, the signal of awareness becomes clear again. You might begin to notice it at unexpected times, while watching the steam rise from a cup or feeling sunlight warm your skin. These moments aren't special because of what happens in them. They're special because you are present. Presence doesn't add anything new, it simply reveals what has always been true. The world seen through awareness becomes more vivid. Colours brighter, sounds deeper, time slower. Every moment feels like a small eternity contained in breath. And as you begin to recognise this quiet observer within, you realise it's not personal in the way thoughts are. It doesn't have opinions or preferences. It doesn't care about winning arguments or collecting achievements. It's the part of you that remains calm when everything else changes. It's what notices laughter without needing to own it, what feels pain without collapsing into it. There's an ease in knowing that such awareness cannot be lost. It may be forgotten, covered by worry or distraction, but it never leaves. It's like the sky hidden behind clouds, unseen but unshaken. No matter how loud the storm becomes, the sky does not panic. When you reconnect with the observer, you begin to live from that same steadiness. You might find that ordinary tasks become gentler when you bring this awareness into them. Walking, breathing, speaking, everything slows, softens. You start to listen more deeply, not only to others but to the silence between words. You notice how every moment offers a choice, to rush past or to enter it fully. Awareness invites you to enter, again and again, until the act of noticing becomes your way of being. There's a kind of peace that follows, not the peace of a life without problems, but the peace of knowing there's a place within you untouched by them. When you face something difficult, you can return to that space, like stepping inside a quiet room where nothing needs to be solved. The observer doesn't erase pain, it embraces it without drowning in it. The more often you return to this awareness, the more it becomes a companion, a quiet friend that walks beside you in every moment. It's not separate from you, but it can feel like a wiser presence, patient, accepting, endlessly kind. You can talk to it without words, asking nothing, needing nothing. It doesn't answer in sentences, but in calm, the way still water reflects the sky without effort. And perhaps this is what it means to live consciously, not to fill every silence, but to listen, not to control every outcome, but to participate with awareness. The observer within is not distant from life. It's the part of life that witnesses its own unfolding. The more clearly you sense it, the less alone you feel, because you realize that awareness connects everything. At the very beginning of our journey, we called it the whisper behind every thought. Now that whisper has become a voice, quiet, steady, familiar. It's not something to chase or analyze. It is home. And when you rest in it, even for a few breaths, you begin to sense that the observer within and the vast awareness beyond might not be different things at all, but two reflections of the same infinite silence. So, as you breathe tonight, let that quiet presence remind you that there is nothing you need to become. You already are the awareness that sees, that feels, that knows, and in that knowing, life becomes simpler, softer, beautifully enough. Imagine standing before a still lake at night. The surface is so calm that the stars above are mirrored perfectly below. For a moment it becomes difficult to tell which way is up, whether you're looking at the heavens or their reflection. Awareness works in the same way. The universe looks at itself through you, and what you see looking back is the reflection of something vast, ancient, and endlessly awake. From the beginning of this journey, we've spoken of the observer, the silent witness who watches thoughts rise and fall, who notices light and shadow move across the mind. Now, at the end, that witness begins to dissolve into something larger. It's as though the small mirror you've carried, the one you thought belonged only to you, suddenly reveals itself to be part of an endless mosaic of mirrors, each reflecting the same light. Every consciousness, every living being, every tiny spark of awareness adds its reflection to the great mirror of being. When you walk through a crowded street, you might see countless faces, each absorbed in their own worlds. But beneath those separate stories, the same awareness glows quietly in every gaze. The same spark that watches from behind your eyes is looking back at you through theirs. Different histories, different memories, yet one consciousness, fragmented into 1,000 points of view, learning what it means to be. It's humbling to think that the universe, after billions of years of silence, has found a way to witness its own beauty. It built eyes from stardust, nerves from lightning, and minds capable of wonder. Through us, through trees and oceans and even the smallest creatures that turn toward the light, the cosmos becomes aware of itself. You could say that reality has been waiting for this moment all along, to see its own reflection and whisper, "I am here." Perhaps that's why awareness feels so familiar, so intimate. It isn't a visitor, it's home itself, the original space from which everything arises. When you look within, you're not escaping the world, you're returning to its source. And when you look outward, you're not leaving yourself. You're expanding into the rest of existence. Inner and outer are not opposites, but two directions of the same gaze. If you've ever watched someone you love fall asleep, you've seen this mystery in its gentlest form. Their breath slows, their features soften, and for a moment the usual distinctions, person, body, mind, seem to fade. What remains is the quiet presence of being itself. It's the same presence that breathes through you, that watches over every moment without judgment or demand. Awareness does not end when thoughts end. It simply rests like the night sky holding the moon. Across cultures and centuries, poets and scientists alike have searched for words to describe this connection. Some call it the divine, others consciousness, others the quantum fabric of existence. But names are like ripples on the lake. They can never contain the water. What matters is the recognition that the light shining from the stars and the light of awareness within you are not two different things. They are the same brightness, meeting across the endless distance between subject and object, and discovering that there was never any distance at all. This realization doesn't demand belief or philosophy. It unfolds naturally in quiet moments. You might sense it while watching the wind move through trees, or while listening to a child's laughter, or while sitting alone in the stillness of evening. For a heartbeat, everything feels unified. The air, the sound, the awareness of it all. And then the mind rushes back in to name it, to hold it. But even as the moment passes, something within you remembers. The world you begin to see is not a collection of separate things, but a single flowing movement. Waves rise and fall, but the ocean remains. The witness within and the universe beyond are two sides of the same motion, observing, creating, dissolving, renewing. When you smile, the universe smiles through you. When you look at the night sky, it is not only you who gazes upward. The stars are, in some unfathomable way, looking back. No formula can express this. No equation can translate it. Yet you can feel it in the quiet space between thoughts. That gentle awareness that is both you and not you. It holds every experience without preference. The laughter, the loss, the ordinary moments that fill your days. When you rest in that awareness, even for a few breaths, the world seems to soften. Colours become warmer, sounds more tender, time slower. The division between inside and outside begins to blur, and what remains is simply presence, vast, timeless, aware. Perhaps this is what life has been leading toward all along. The recognition that existence is not something happening to you, but through you. You're not a separate observer standing at the edge of reality. You're the very space in which reality unfolds. Each heartbeat, each thought, each act of seeing adds a brushstroke to the infinite painting of being. And maybe that's why compassion feels so natural once awareness deepens. When you sense that the same consciousness looks out from every pair of eyes, kindness stops being a virtue and becomes instinct. To harm another would be to dim the same light you carry. To forgive becomes as effortless as breathing, because what you forgive in others is simply the part of yourself still learning. If you let this awareness settle for a moment, it begins to glow, not as an idea, but as a quiet truth felt in the body. The mind may still wander, the world may still change, but awareness remains steady, like a mirror that reflects every image without ever being stained by it. Whether joy or sorrow passes before it, the mirror stays clear, and that mirror, infinite and silent, is what you truly are. Now, as our journey nears its close, take a slow breath and feel the world breathing with you. The air entering your lungs once flowed through forests and oceans, through countless other lives before reaching you. Every breath you take is shared. Every heartbeat is part of the same rhythm that moves through galaxies and grains of sand. Awareness is not contained within the body. The body itself is an expression of awareness, shimmering for a moment in the vast mirror of existence. So tonight, as you rest, let that awareness widen until it fills the room, the sky, and beyond. Let it hold everything: the stars, the silence, the soft turning of the earth. And if your eyes grow heavy, know that the same consciousness that lights the stars will continue its quiet watching through your dreams. Whether your eyes are open or already drifting into sleep, thank you for sharing this quiet look into the heart of awareness. The light you carry is the same light that began at the dawn of time, still shining, still seeing, still being. The universe watches itself through you, and it has never stopped smiling.